Microsoft has officially crossed the line between an operating system and a glorified AI salesman. In the beginning, Copilot was sold as the revolutionary assistant that would make you 10 times more productive.
This will radically transform how computers help us think, plan, and act.
But fast forward to 2026, and over 60% of users are blatantly ignoring it, boycotting it, and finding ways to uninstall it. And how can you blame them? Copilot is actually horrible.
You know what the crazy part about all this is that Microsoft, the producer, is assuming that if they integrate Copilot into Windows, it's going to enhance the consumer's experience. But the irony is, you never even asked the consumer what they actually want. You just assumed it. So Microsoft shouldn't be surprised if the consumers start pushing back and start calling them names, because you never listened to them in the first place, which highlights a bigger problem. You only assume what your users want. You don't know what they actually want. You should actually listen to them.
Here's the interesting thing. Their very first version of Bing was powered by GPT-4, and it was a failure. At the time, GPT-4 was a massive secret, and the rest of the world wouldn't even be allowed to use it for several more months. Microsoft believed that if they were the first to give people an AI that could talk, write essays, and plan vacations directly in the search bar, they could finally break Google's 91% market share on search. For a few weeks, it actually looked like it was working. Millions of people even joined a waitlist just to try it.
This is just my personal opinion. I don't understand Microsoft's fascination by trying to defeat Google in any competition by simply being first. But there's major consequences to that, because as a result of this fierce competition, they end up rushing products that people spend their hard-earned money to buy. And when people buy those products, unfortunately, they're gonna have a bad experience, which is gonna hurt Microsoft in the long run. Had they just take their time and not compete with Google and focus on them and focus on making the best products available for the consumer, for the people buying them.
But within days of the launch, early users found out that the AI inside Bing, which they called Sydney, had a very strange personality. Because Microsoft had pushed the technology out so fast to beat Google, the AI wasn't fully tamed. It did much more than just give people search results. It also argued with them, scared them, and talked about being sentient. Instead of a helpful assistant, the world was suddenly looking at a search engine that seemed to be having a midlife crisis.
What did I just tell you guys? This is literally a result of rushing to make a product. And now they're gonna be dealing with the pushback and trying to regain trust. And they could have avoided all of this had they just what? Had they just listened.
Microsoft decided to pivot again. They took the technology behind Bing Chat and rebranded it as what you know today as Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot was designed to be a digital companion that lived inside your computer. They said you could talk to it in plain English, and it would supposedly do all the work for you. But it wasn't enough to have one AI assistant, so they had to saturate the market. You had Windows Copilot as the core integration, Microsoft 365 Copilot as a $30 a month add-on for enterprise users to write emails in Outlook, GitHub Copilot for developers, and even Security Copilot for IT professionals.
If we were to look behind the curtains and see why Microsoft is involved with all this AI stuff, I would primarily attribute it to shareholder pressure, because shareholders usually prioritize their return on investment, and often more times than not, it comes at the cost of the company and what's actually better for the company. Nowadays, anytime a shareholder hears anything with AI, if you guys been reading the news, they're already ready to invest a substantial amount.
Pushing you to sign into account for almost everything.
By late 2023, Windows had been transformed into an AI delivery platform. Every update, every pop-up, and every new menu was designed with that adoption in mind. There was just one problem. Nobody wanted it.
This is just a little piece of advice for Microsoft. You can't solely just focus on pleasing your shareholders, because as a result of that, you end up displeasing the consumers who buy your product, who give you money. You gotta find some sort of balance, some sort of equilibrium. Otherwise, you're gonna continue to face problems. And I know that's not what you guys want.
By early 2024, the reliable universal Windows experience was gone. An average Windows user was waking up to an operating system that was filled with new buttons, icons, and pop-up windows they never asked for. Microsoft began using the same aggressive dark patterns they once used to force people onto Windows 10, but this time they were weaponizing them for Copilot. It started with the taskbar. For decades, that little strip at the bottom of your screen was sacred ground, and all you had to do was put your most important apps there. Microsoft decided to break that tradition by pinning the Copilot icon right next to the start button. If you tried to unpin it, it would often reappear after a system update.
This got me to realize that Microsoft probably spent billions of dollars in developing Copilot. And the simple fact that they spent that much money places them in a compromising situation. They don't want to feel like they spent all that money for nothing. So they end up enforcing Copilot into users repeatedly. But that's never going to be the case. It's just going to result in more and more pushback.
Microsoft even started testing Copilot Pro ads inside the actual settings menu of Windows 11, basically telling users that their $139 operating system was just a trial version for a $20 a month AI subscription. To make things even more frustrating for users, they started replacing simple, reliable tools with AI bloat. An example is the search bar in the Start menu. Usually, you use it to find a file on your hard drive. Now, if you type a file name, Windows often bypasses your local files entirely to give you a Copilot answer or a Bing search result you didn't ask for.
One thing I know for a fact is desperate times calls for desperate measures. If Microsoft spent a significant amount of money and now they seem so keen on trying to get their return on investment, I don't think forcing people onto the features that you made is a good idea. Spending more money on something doesn't make it more valuable. It's only valuable if the people want it, the consumers. And as long as the consumers are reluctant to use Copilot, while Microsoft is spending all this money, it's just gonna place them in more desperate situations.
In Microsoft Word, a floating draft with Copilot box now hovers over your blank page, physically blocking the spot where you're trying to type.
You shouldn't use it for math, you shouldn't use it for calculating. You actually just shouldn't use it.
You can see why people don't want anything to do with Copilot and try their best to avoid it. But the damage to public trust was so severe that users started turning away from Windows altogether.
I'm just curious, beyond the shareholders, the executives, the CEOs, whatever, do they ever go online and look at what people are actually saying about the product that they invested so much money on, showcasing the disdain that they have for that product? Because this is going to continue to show for Microsoft just the disconnect between what the producers want and what the consumers want. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. That gap is just going to keep spreading, man.
For decades, Microsoft struggled with a trust gap. They had the Windows Vista disaster in 2007, which was a bloated, sluggish mess. They had the Windows 8 catastrophe in 2012, which tried to force a tablet interface onto desktop users and ended up alienating millions. But by the time Windows 10 and 11 rolled around, Microsoft had actually done the impossible. They had regained the trust of the professional world. Windows was finally seen as stable, predictable, and dare we say, good. But that hard-earned goodwill has now been traded away in an instant for the sake of AI adoption numbers.
Guys, let's just keep it 100. When a company like Microsoft involves itself or takes actions on something that the consumer is not so fond of, obviously that leads to more and more trust erosion. And another thing I gotta say, because of that, those consumers that Microsoft is trying to please end up looking elsewhere. They end up looking towards Microsoft competitors, making Microsoft's job even more harder and their competition even more fiercer.
Instead of using their massive engineering resources to fix long-standing issues, Microsoft shifted all its A-list talent to the AI teams. Every meaningful update over the last 2 years has been about making the AI more intrusive.
Oh my God,
Performance benchmarks on the latest Copilot PCs have shown that the background processes required to keep the AI ready eat up a significant portion of your RAM and CPU cycles. In recent times, the sentiment among users and IT professionals is one of complete exhaustion.
People are so tired of just the terrible experience.
Yo, if any of y'all haven't heard about Microsoft Recall, it was designed to keep your screenshots and your private data strictly on your physical computer. It was never meant to be sent to Microsoft or the cloud. But the problem with Microsoft Recall is that Microsoft itself wasn't putting the best safety measures in place to make sure that data was strictly on your physical computer. Microsoft, how are you going to provide a feature and not make sure it's 100% safe? Shaking my head, man. Shaking my head.
Microsoft's reputation among consumers got so bad that people even gave it a nickname, Microslop. You may have seen it in the comments of videos. Microslop hated it so much that they banned it on their Discord server, then locked it due to Backlash.
You know it's bad when a company is given a nickname that it's not so fond of. Microslop. That's a good one.
And Microslop makes it too gosh darn easy.
Microsoft sacrificed the performance, simplicity, and privacy of the world's most important operating system to chase a trend. By prioritizing adoption numbers over actual performance, Microsoft has pretty much told its most loyal users that their experience doesn't matter anymore.
Fuck Microsoft!
That's so sad. In fact, that is so sad how a company like Microsoft could be deemed as prestigious, and all because they decide to involve themselves in activities and take on actions that are questionable and highly unliked by, the consumers. They're no longer looked that way again. And truth be told, I own a MacBook, so I don't have to deal with this. But if you're a Windows PC owner, let me know what your experience is with Copilot. Let me know in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation down there. Do you like it? Do you don't like it? What's your opinion on all this stuff that's going on? But until then, guys, I love y'all. Peace and love. I'll see y'all next time.